Good evening everyone. Welcome to BAJIRAO IAS Academy, the Hindu News Analysis. So today is 26th July 2025 and today we have some very important topics from different newspapers. So one by one we'll try to discuss all these important topics in a very detailed and in-depth manner. And before going into this discussion, so please subscribe and also hit the like button. So the first topic with which we are going to start this session is about India-Maldives relations. And in fact, this is a very important topic. So this is important in the context of Gender Studies paper 2. Because we knew in Gender Studies paper 2, there is a section called International Relations or India's relations with its neighboring countries. And in fact, Maldives is one of India's closest maritime neighbor, which is located in the Indian Ocean. So however, in recent times, the changing geopolitics in the region in general and in Maldives in particular assumed significance. So Maldives' position in the Indian Ocean region is a geopolitical and geostrategic and geoeconomic importance for India. Now we all knew that Indo-Pacific or the Indian Ocean has been assuming a lot of significance in recent times. So particularly, Maldives is located in the Indian Ocean. Maldives traditionally followed a policy called India First policy. But the current president of Maldives is Mohamed Moiju. And in fact, when he was in the opposition party, he ran the India Out campaign. So after he was coming into power, he was showing the pro-China stance as well, right? So over a period of time, India and Maldives under Mohamed Moiju, so they are coming close and they have improved their bilateral relations as well. I hope you have understood this background. We all knew that the Prime Minister Narendra Modi recently had an official visit to Maldives. Now in this context, so let's have a look at India and Maldives bilateral relations. So what is the context? The context is Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on an official visit to Maldives. So I hope you know where Maldives is actually. So Maldives is located in Indian Ocean somewhere in this region, very close to India's Lakshadweeps, right? So very close to India's Lakshadweep, Maldives is located. So Maldives' position in the Indian Ocean is very important and very significant for India. And in fact, this visit by Prime Minister Narendra Modi is his third visit to the Maldives, right? And in fact, it is first by any head of state or government during President Moiju's tenure. So I hope you have understood the context of this topic. Now, Maldivian President Mohamed Moiju invited Prime Minister Narendra Modi on 60th Independence Day of Maldives. So Maldives is going to celebrate the 60th Independence Day, and on this event, Maldivian President Mohamed Moiju invited Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, right? So therefore, PM Modi congratulated Maldives on its 60th Independence Day. And in fact, Prime Minister Narendra Modi also attended Maldives Independence Day as the guest of honor. So therefore, PM Modi and Prime Minister President Mohamed Moiju, so they have issued a stamp to mark 60 years of India-Maldives independence. Both Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Mohamed Moiju, so they've jointly issued a stamp, and that stamp marks the 60 years of India-Maldives relations. Now in fact, when Maldives emerged as an independent country, so India was one of the first countries to establish diplomatic relations or recognize Maldives, because Maldives gets its independence in the year 1965. Right, so Maldives gets its independence in the year 1965, and India became the first country to recognize and also establish diplomatic relations with Maldives. However, the stamp that has been issued by Indian PM and Maldivian President features Indian Uru boat, right? So URU, Uru boat, and also Maldives Vadu Doni boat, right? So therefore both Uru boat and Vadu Doni and Uru boat, so they actually symbolize a shared maritime heritage and centuries old Indian Ocean trade between India and Maldives. Right, so let's understand what exactly is this Uru boat and Vadu Doni boat. Now if you talk about this Uru boat, so this is a large wooden, though handcrafted, in the historical boatyards of Baipur in Kerala. Right, so this is a though which is handcrafted in the historic boatyards in Baipur, Kerala. So however, what exactly is Vadu Doni? So this is a traditional Maldivian fishing boat, right? Vadu Doni is a traditional Maldivian fishing boat, right? So this is being used for reef and coastal fishing in Maldives, right? So therefore the stamp commemorates both Uru boat as well as Vadu Doni. And apart from that, India gifts Bhishma health cube sets to Maldives. Right, so recently on this visit, along with issuing a stamp, India also gifts Bhishma health cube sets to Maldives. Right, so India actually gifted Bhishma health cubes to Maldives as part of India's neighborhood first policy. Now remember that the government of India launched neighborhood first policy to maintain friendly and close relations with all Indian neighbors. So we give our first priority to India's neighbors. So as part of it, so India has launched its neighborhood first policy. And along with that, India has also launched Vision Mahasagar, keeping in mind the Indian Ocean and the littoral countries in the Indian Ocean. Now when I say Sagar, which is security and growth for all in the region, so this is an acronym for security and growth for all in the region. Now understand that India is known as a net security provider. So we all knew about this. India is a net security provider in the region. So therefore India plays a very, very important role in stabilizing the entire Indian Ocean. So particularly Indian government or Indian Navy will help in humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, and maritime domain awareness, anti-piracy operations, and anti-trafficking. So all these different arenas, so India will play a very, very important and key role. And apart from that, India gifted, handed over 2 units of Arogya Maitri health cube, which is called as Bhishma. Right, so they're being called as Arogya Maitri health cube sets to the government of Maldives. So if I talk about Bhishma, it is a state of the art portable cube which containing medical essentials which are designed for rapid deployment in emergencies and in disaster zones. Right, so which is called as Bhishma. And apart from that, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Maldivian President Mohamed Moiju, so they've jointly inaugurated a building of the Ministry of Defense in Malé. However, the Ministry of Defense building in Malé has been constructed with India's financial assistance. That thing we should remember. And apart from that, an agreement or a memorandum of understanding has also been signed by India and Maldives, and as part of this memorandum of understanding, India extended a line of credit of 4,850 crore rupees to Maldives. Right, so this line of credit has been extended to Maldives to support this country because it has been facing the twin deficit problem. Right, so Maldives have been facing the twin deficit problem, and that is why India has provided the line of credit to Maldives. Right, so therefore, so one thing that we should understand here, so when we talk about this twin deficit problem, we heard this twin deficit problem with respect to the banks also. Right, so with respect to banks also, in India we have been the banks have been facing the twin deficit problem. Now similarly, Maldives also facing the twin deficit problem. However, this is the first time that such a credit is being extended to the Maldives in Indian rupee. Right, so around 4,850 crore of line of credit has been extended to Maldives in Indian rupee. Now, earlier, as I have already told you, that the current president of Maldives, Mr. Mohamed Moiju, he came to power in Maldives through anti-India campaign, or this campaign is also known as India Out campaign. Right, so therefore Maldives made a shift from anti-India India Out campaign to extending a ceremonial invitation to Prime Minister Narendra Modi for its Independence Day celebrations. So therefore we can say that this is a diplomatic turnaround from Maldives. However, initially the current Maldivian president, Mr. Mohamed Moiju, so he began his tenure in September 2023, reflected a pro-China tilt. Right, so in the beginning, Mohamed Moiju's tenure, so it has reflected a pro-China tilt. However, his party campaign had strongly criticized India's military presence in Maldives. When Mohamed Moiju became the president of Maldives, Maldives asked India to remove its military personnel from Maldives. And he also made a diplomatic visits to countries like Turkey and China. So therefore, India has an adversarial relations with both Turkey and China, but when initially Mohamed Moiju came to the power, he made diplomatic visits to both Turkey and China, bypassing India. However, it was actually a tradition. If any Maldivian president, the Maldivian president's first visit would be India, but Mohamed Moiju chose Turkey and China. So he also sent a clear message of divergence from Maldives' traditional India first policy. Now in this context, so we can appreciate or applaud the pragmatic diplomacy of India. So we can say that India adopted a pragmatic diplomacy, a realist diplomatic attitude, because when the current government came to power initially in Maldives, so some ministers have made derogatory remarks against India and Indian Prime Minister, and the government also demand a troop withdrawal from Maldives. However, India maintained composure, choosing engagement over escalation. So India never tried for escalation, rather India continued to engage with Maldives. However, Prime Minister Narendra Modi met Mohamed Moiju at COP28 in the United Arab Emirates for the first time, and India replaced its 76 military personnel with HAL, Hindustan Aeronautic Limited technicians in May 2024. So thereby India addressed Mali's concerns without severing strategic ties with Maldives. Now, Maldives demanded the removal of troops from Maldives, and India responded to the Maldivian concerns. However, This pragmatic diplomacy on the part of India is coincided with Maldives facing several issues and several problems in recent past. They are including the internal economic stress that the Maldives has been going through, and limited Chinese support that the Maldives has been receiving in recent times. Now, when I say internal economic stress after the COVID-19 pandemic, the tourism is one of the mainstay of Maldives has declined significantly. And after the Maldivian ministers made derogatory remarks against Indian Prime Minister and India, so Indian tourist footfall into Maldives also significantly dropped. And in recent times there is also a limited Chinese support to Maldives, and ruling party has been gaining supermajority in the parliament. So therefore all these factors have led to Maldives looking towards India instead of China. So therefore, seeking stability and economic aid, Foreign Minister Musa Jamir visited India in May 2024, followed by President Moiju's 5-day visit in October to India. So therefore, this visit has actually concluded the adoption of joint vision on economic and maritime security partnership between India and Maldives. So therefore, India's overall financial assistance, it played a very important role in the reset of ties between India and Maldives. So therefore, India has actually raised the aid by 120 crore, rolling over the treasury bills worth of 150 million US dollars. And India even extended the currency swaps of 750 million US dollars. So thereby offering the highest ever quotas for essential goods exports to Maldives. And even trade between India and Maldives has increased to 548 million US dollars in the year 2023, and it has been backed by visa free access for Indian business travelers and the line of credit projects that India has financed in Maldives. So therefore, all these factors have been emphasizing on the pragmatic diplomacy that India has adopted that helped reset ties between India and Maldives. Remember, Maldives is a very important player for India in the Indian Ocean. So if India wanted to remain a net security provider and India continues to maintain a hegemonic role in the Indian Ocean, Maldives is very important. So we should not allow Maldives to slip into the clutches of China as well. So therefore, a reset in India-Maldives relations, particularly a welcome thing, right? So I hope you have understood this topic. And the next topic is, so we all knew that Allahabad High Court Judge Justice Yashwant Verma's house was, in his house, bundles of cash that was set on fire was found. So, this was taken very seriously by the judiciary, and the Chief Justice of India has asked the Parliament to impeach Justice Verma on allegations of corruption. So therefore, Lok Sabha is going to take up the removal motion of High Court Judge Yashwant Verma. So therefore, in this context, let's understand, so what is the process or the procedure to remove a High Court judge, which is similar to the removal of the Supreme Court judge as well, right? So this topic has been given in the Hindu newspaper, and this could be important for general studies paper 2, which has a judiciary, right? So a judiciary topic. From this topic, this could be a very, very important, right? So what is the context? So the context is that Lok Sabha is set to initiate a bipartisan motion to remove Justice Yashwant Verma. So Justice Yashwant Verma is Allahabad High Court judge following a cash recovery controversy. So in this motion, 152 MPs from both ruling and opposition parties are signing the removal motion. So we'll understand the procedure as well, right? So what procedure has to be adopted for the removal of a high court judge? But in this case, around 152 MPs from different political parties are signing the removal motion of Justice Yashwant Verma. So therefore, this action underscores the importance of maintaining the judicial integrity and separation of powers between different branches of the government. So we have executive, legislature, and the judiciary. Executive, legislature, and the judiciary. So therefore, it highlights the separation of powers between executive, legislature, and judiciary, which are the three branches of the government, and it's also highlight maintaining the judicial integrity as well. Judicial integrity. So judicial integrity in the sense that accountability which is which is necessary on the part of the judiciary, and transparency, accountability, transparency, right? So these factors are very important on the part of the judiciary. Now we'll be talking about the removal motion and the political consensus that has been arrived for this. So around 152 MPs, including those from the ruling parties and the opposition, so they actually signed the removal motion, right? So they signed removal motion for removing High Court Judge Justice Yashwant Verma, right? So we can also say that it is a rare form of unity that has been shown by the MPs from different political parties. However, the motion that the Lok Sabha is going to take up follows the procedure that has been mentioned in the Judges Inquiry Act, right? So the procedure has been mentioned in the Judges Inquiry Act of 1968, right? So a set of procedure has been provided in the Judges Inquiry Act of 1968. So therefore, this procedure or the Judges Inquiry Act outlines the process of investigating and removing judges, right? So first there will be investigation, and after the investigation, so a removal of the judge. If this investigation proves that the judge is guilty of corruption, then the judge will be removed by a motion adopted by both houses of the parliament, right? So in this context, Speaker Om Birla is expected to appoint a three-member inquiry committee. Now understand that here the Judges Inquiry Committee 1968, so it has mentioned a set of procedure. Now as part of this procedure, Lok Sabha or the Rajya Sabha, so some members of Lok Sabha and a certain members of Rajya Sabha. So for example, imagine in this case Lok Sabha. So some members of Lok Sabha have signed a motion and addressed this motion to the Speaker. Right? So in this case, Speaker may entertain or reject this motion. So if Speaker entertains this motion, he would constitute a three-member committee to investigate the charges against the judge. A three-member committee to investigate charges against the committee. And three-member committee would decide whether the respective judge is guilty of corruption or not. So once he is guilty of corruption, then the removal process would takes place in both houses of the parliament. So it actually requires special majority to pass such a motion in both houses of the parliament. It requires a special majority. So after it is being passed with the special majority in both houses of the parliament, it will be addressed to the president for the removal of the concerned judge. So ultimately president would remove the judge, and this is how the procedure would actually takes place. So I hope you have understood this. So therefore, Speaker Om Birla is expected to constitute a 3-member inquiry committee as per the Judges Enquiry Act of 1968, and which is in adherence to the minimum 5 judges for such proceedings when combined with the potential of Supreme Court. So therefore, the Lok Sabha will consider the motion first, followed by the Rajya Sabha, as part of the carriage of the proceedings in an unprecedented case. Now, the Law Minister, Mr. Kiran Rijiju, so he emphasized the unanimous support from all political parties, highlighting the gravity of the situation and its implications on judicial integrity and judicial accountability as well. Now, let's understand the allegations against Justice Yashwant Verma. Now, in March, a fire accident at Justice Yashwant Verma's Delhi's residence has led to the discovery of half-burnt currency notes. Right? So there were a huge number of half-burnt currency notes in Justice Yashwant Verma's Delhi's residence. So therefore, it has raised a number of questions about the potential impropriety on the part of the judge. And after that, the judge Justice Yashwant Verma was transferred to Allahabad High Court immediately after this incident, and it was a move that some viewed as an interim measure pending further investigation. However, a Supreme Court inquiry committee has also been constituted, and it looked into the matter following established protocols for investigating the allegations against the sitting judges. And in this, Chief Justice Sanjeev Khanna forwarded a report to the President Draupadi Murmu and the Prime Minister, initiating the formal process that could lead to the judges' removal. So at that point of time, Chief Justice Sanjeev Khanna asked both Prime Minister and the President for the removal of Justice Yashwant Verma. And in fact, the findings from the Supreme Court Inquiry Committee also paved the way for the removal proceedings in Parliament, potentially setting a strong precedent for how these similar cases might be handled in the future as well. Now let's understand the procedure for the removal of judges. How judges will be removed. Now, Indian Constitution Article 124 Clause 4 and the Judges Enquiry Act of 1968 Judges Enquiry Act. So both actually govern the removal of the High Court judge as well as the Supreme Court judge. Judges Enquiry Act and Article 124 Clause 4 of the Indian Constitution. So they deal with the removal of High Court as well as the Supreme Court judges. Now in this case, in order to remove a judge, the procedure actually is, so in case of Lok Sabha, around 100 members need to sign a motion. With respect to Rajya Sabha, around 50 members need to sign a motion. So 50 members needed to sign a motion in Rajya Sabha and 100 members need to sign a motion in the Lok Sabha for the removal of judge. However, the inquiry committee that will be constituted by the speaker in case of Lok Sabha or chairman in case of Rajya Sabha includes the Chief Justice of India or any other Supreme Court judge, a High Court Chief Justice and a distinguished jurist. And in this case, both houses must pass this motion with a special majority. Right, so a special majority is required to pass the motion. However, both houses must pass this motion with the special majority. So the final order for the removal is passed by the President of India, and who is currently President Draupadi Murmu. So therefore, this process actually respects the separation of powers, right? So which is a principle that has been adopted in the Indian Constitution, while providing for a mechanism for accountability from the Indian judiciary. So in case the allegations against a judge are proven, a writ mandamus might be considered to compel necessary action as well. So therefore, overall, this procedure is designed to balance judicial independence, which is a basic structure, which is a basic feature of the Indian Constitution, with the need for accountability on the part of the judiciary to ensure the judicial integrity, thereby reflecting a complex interplay of constitutional principles in the Indian legal system. So this is how a judge is removed from the Indian High Court or the Supreme Court. So next topic is India's renewable energy resources. Now, every country has been making a shift from the fossil fuels to the renewable energy resources. Renewable energy resources are considered as the clean energy resources. They will not emit the greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. However, despite the clean energy push from different countries, fossil fuels continues to be the major energy resources for several countries. Right, so therefore, let's understand some data with respect to the adoption of renewable energy resources by different countries, including India, and why countries still dependent on fossil fuels more than the renewable energy resources, and what are the challenges and how to address those challenges. And this topic has been given in the Indian Express newspaper, and this could be important for your gender studies paper 3. Along with that, it could also be important for the prelims examination. So let's understand the context. The context is that as of now, the world has added a record 582 gigawatt of renewable energy capacity in 2024, right? So around 582 gigawatt of renewable energy has been added, so which is combined around the world. However, the fossil fuel consumption, when I say fossil fuels, crude oil, natural gas, coal, so all these are known as the fossil fuel. But the fossil fuel consumption continues to increase, keeping the greenhouse gas emissions at the record levels. Now, when you burn the fossil fuels, which release the greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, and because of this reason, so it causes global warming, it causes climate change, and it also has some pollution related concerns, right? So therefore, the fossil fuel consumption has also been increasing around the world, and that led to the increase in the greenhouse gases to a record level, right? However, recently the International Renewable Energy Agency has published a report. So this report shows that the renewable energy has grown significantly to a 582 gigawatt around the world. It has not displaced the fossil fuels in the global energy mix. The fossil fuels continues to dominate the energy profile of number of different countries. So therefore, let's understand the stagnant progress in the energy transition. Right, so if we look into some data with respect to adoption of the renewable energy resources, so the renewable energy accounts for just 30% of the global electricity generation. However, the electricity itself is just 20 to 22% of the global energy use, thereby limiting the renewables overall impact. right? So if we talk about the renewable energy resources, so we are able to generate electricity through the renewable energy resources. So therefore electricity itself is just 20 to 22% of the global energy use, so thereby it has limited the renewables overall impact. And in fact, despite the growth in the renewable energy resources, the fossil fuels are burnt more now than a decade before, right, a decade ago. So therefore we have been using the excess amount of the fossil fuels in order to meet the energy security, our energy needs, because we are not able to meet our energy needs from the renewable energy resources alone. So that thing we should understand. And even the greenhouse gas emissions have also reached the record highs in recent years because of the excess usage of the fossil fuels. Even though we have been using the renewable energy resources, but there has been a growing needs and demand of energy, right? So in order to ensure energy security, renewables alone will not be sufficient. So because of this reason, countries have been excessively using fossil fuels as well, right? So in fact the current energy system is also deeply the fossil fuel dependent. We have been excessively dependent on the fossil fuels. For example, imagine a thermal power plant, right? So thermal power plants, so the thermal power plants use coal as a raw material to produce electricity. Now here, coal is a fossil fuel. When we burn coal, it releases the greenhouse gases into the environment, right? So therefore in India we still depend heavily on coal and thermal power plants to generate electricity. So therefore, don't you think we have depended on the fossil fuels for generating electricity? So in order to ensure energy security for India, it is important for us to generate electricity even from the coal as well, right? So India also made a tremendous progress with respect to the renewable energy resources, but because of the growing energy needs, we still dependent on coal to generate electricity in India. And after that, let's understand the uneven global distribution of the renewable energy resources as well. So in fact, the 71% of the new renewable energy capacity comes from Asia, right? So this is huge. 71% of the new renewable capacity comes from Asia, particularly from China, because 62% of it is coming from China alone. However, Africa has added just 7% capacity from an already low base. However, China is dominating in terms of manufacturing, causing dependency on its supply chains. For example, the manufacturing of the solar photovoltaic cells. So China actually dominates the manufacturing of these solar cells, and because of that reason, number of countries have depended on the supply chains from China. And even many regions have lacked access to the affordable renewable technology. And in this context, the International Solar Alliance has been established by India and France jointly in the year 2015. So it focuses on deploying the affordable renewable energy technologies to all the member countries. And International Solar Alliance also worked on principle called One Sun, One Earth and One Grid, right? So that is the theme on which, or that is the principle on which the International Solar Alliance usually works. However, the growth is also concentrated in very few countries, leaving other countries behind in this renewable energy push. So therefore, fossil fuels are still rising around the world. The fossil fuel use has been increasing around the world because the fossil fuels actually have the dominating position when it comes to generating electricity throughout the world. Even though the renewable energy has been growing at a rapid pace throughout the world, the fossil fuel usage has been increasing at a tremendous pace as well. This is what the data has been revealed. However, only 10% of the new renewable energy capacity was added in the year 2024 was fossil fuel based, but it remains the highest usage. And similarly, the effective transition is most urgent in major emitting nations like China and India. So effective transition is possible, but it requires finances, it requires technology as well. On the other hand, the developed world is not ready to provide financial support and the technology which is required for effective transition for the developed countries. However, the fossil fuels still provide over 90% of global energy consumption. Now we'll understand the broader challenge of clean energy shift in India. Right, so with respect to India, electricity that has been generated tripled since 1990, which is driven by the increasing demand and India's energy security needs. However, despite such a progress, renewable energy resources have not replaced the fossil fuels effectively, despite India making such a rapid progress. By 2050, even optimistic projections have been showing that only 40 to 45% of the energy share would come from the clean energy resources. So thereby, there are the energy security concerns. In order to meet the energy security concerns, countries like India still dependent on the fossil fuels. Right? So thereby pushing countries to prioritize reliability over the cleanliness. So if we talk about the energy transition alone, so this energy transition from the fossil fuels to the renewable energy resources will not be sufficient. Right, so we need to address the climate change concerns. In order to address the climate change concerns, the energy transition alone is insufficient. We need a technological innovation and equitable distribution, along with that a stronger policies as well. The developed countries must share technologies, and financial support should also be provided to the developing and underdeveloped nations. Along with that, equitable distribution or equity in terms of distribution of renewable energy resources and the technologies. So the International Solar Alliance will play an instrumental role in this. Stronger policies. The global goal of keeping temperature below 2 degrees Celsius will likely remain out of reach if these policies have not followed. Right, so if there's no technology, if there are no finances, if there are no stronger policies, if the world don't come forward, we will not be able to keep the global temperature rise below 2 degrees Celsius. Right, so these factors should be kept in mind. And the next important topic is, recently Meghalaya has come up with an important decision to tackle or to counter the rising HIV infections. So Meghalaya has made it mandatory that the pre-marriage HIV or AIDS tests, so they should be mandatory in the state of Meghalaya. This is to counter the rising number of HIV cases in this state. So what is the context? The context is that the Meghalaya government is considering making the pre-marriage HIV testing is mandatory because of the rising HIV cases, especially in East Khasi Hills in the state of Meghalaya. So therefore, this move from the state of Meghalaya is part of the broader strategy to tackle the public health crisis that took place in the state because of the rising number of infections. So let's understand some data with respect to the rising number of HIV cases in the state of Meghalaya. The East Khasi Hills saw 3,432 HIV cases, so that number is nearly double to 2,604 cases last year. And in fact, out of these many number of cases, only 1,581 patients are currently receiving the treatment. Those who don't receive the treatment, there is a possibility that they may die, or there is also a possibility of these individuals may spread the disease to others as well. Because of this reason, it is concerning. However, about 681 patients who are untraceable by the state government or the health authorities, so they have raised concerns over the treatment adherence. And till now 159 patients have died after stopping the treatment. So once they stopped receiving the treatment, so this treatment is called as antiretroviral therapy. So once they stopped receiving the treatment, around 159 individuals or patients have died. And in fact, the health minister of the state of Meghalaya called this as unacceptable. So therefore, there is a need for an immediate measures to stop spreading the HIV infection to more individuals. And Deputy CM of the state of Meghalaya, he chaired a high-level meeting in recent times with the health and social welfare ministers and MLAs. And he called this as a public health emergency. And it is no longer a threat, but it is a monster. So there is a need to urgently act on this. So antiretroviral therapy is a specific treatment which is given to the HIV/AIDS patients. So let's understand what is antiretroviral therapy. So antiretroviral therapy is the daily use of combination of HIV medicines to treat the HIV. And in fact, it is being also said that HIV saves lives, but it does not cure the HIV. So how it saves the human lives? It reduces the amount of HIV in the body. So HIV is a human immunodeficiency virus, right? So it reduces the load of HIV in the virus in the body, HIV virus in the body, and it also reduces the risk of HIV transmission from one individual to another individual, and it also prevents HIV from advancing to the AIDS, and it protects the immune system as well, right? So through all these methods, it actually saves lives, but it does not cure the HIV. So remember that we don't have a medicine for HIV/AIDS, but antiretroviral therapy is an effective treatment that could actually stop the spread of HIV in the human body. Now understand the difference between HIV and AIDS. So HIV is an acronym for human deficiency virus, and AIDS is acquired immune deficiency syndrome. HIV is the virus that invades or primarily affects the immune system in human beings, that led to the human being would suffer with number of diseases like tuberculosis and other diseases. Now AIDS is the last stage. So after once an individual's immune system is severely affected by the HIV, then the individual would develop AIDS. So the last stage of a spectrum of conditions, initially it is caused by HIV. Now as part of HIV, patients will suffer the minor difficulties such as a flu or other minor symptoms. However, as part of AIDS, if any individual developed AIDS, so patients will experience severe signs and symptoms, and even disrupting the quality of life as well. Now, what are the most common methods of transmission of HIV? They including the unprotected sex with an infected partner, and sharing of needles with infected person, and infection from the blood products, and transmission from the infected mother to the fetus, right? So these are the most common factors through which HIV may spread from one individual to another individual. However, India has made a rapid progress when it comes to curtailing the spread of HIV disease. However, in states like Meghalaya, still there are some concerns with respect to the spread of HIV virus, but there is a need to take strong measures to stop the spread of this virus. So that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much.